What is crackalating, everybody? Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by Numberfire. That is right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and Numberfire.com, as we're getting you set for the Week 16 NFL DFS main slate, breaking down our favorite plays of the week. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for Numberfire.com, joined here as always by Brandon Kadula. He is a managing editor for Numberfire.com. Brandon, Week 16 is on the docket. Interesting slate, I would say. How are you doing today?
Well, anyone who's watching the video version of this can tell that I'm struggling with my headphones here. That's because just before we started, I dunked one of my headphones in my coffee.
Which is not recommended?
No, so I couldn't hear out of the left one. So I had to scramble for my backup pair, which were, of course, all tangled up. So
well, I will guarantee you that you missed the best intro I've ever given, obviously.
Well, hey, because I subscribe and I'm on YouTube, I can go back and just and catch that. So
exactly.
Yeah.
How you doing now that you actually don't have coffee ear things? I don't know the right way to phrase that.
Well, now I got to look at this slate and look at the quarterback situation. So I'd rather just deal with tangled up headphones, I think.
I think the saving grace is that, like, we have a value running back in Deandre Washington, and we have Lamar Jackson. I can just be like, whatever, let's do this instead.
Yeah, it's not hard to build like one good lineup. I think that we'll probably land on like everyone could probably land on like a similar optimal one lineup, but everything outside of Lamar, you're like, well, this guy's got 5 red flags, and like I don't even know what the opposite of a red flag is. Green flag? I don't know.
No. Green flag is good. Green means go.
Yeah,
he's a yellow flag, a caution flag.
Yeah, but the opposite of a red flag. So like,
I guess it would be a green flag.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking it would be like a white flag or a checkered flag, but
like a white flag is like submission.
Yeah, but it's also what? That's one lap left.
Yeah, one lap to go, but like.
So I thought maybe that'd be preferable to a green flag. Anyway, I mean, like a lot of these guys have paths to production, but they also have a lot of like question marks. And for a lot of these guys, it's the fact that their teams are eliminated from the playoffs.
Right. Paths to production, but also paths to destruction. And that's kind of the theme of Week 16, I would say, because even the guys who have something on the line, like there are, as you said, red flags there, because Dak Prescott maybe can't throw a football. I don't know. We'll decide about that later on. But Carson Wentz has nothing around him. He's really struggled. Drew Brees is outdoors. Ryan Tannehill is still Ryan Tannehill. Like Russell Wilson, his team may throw 5 times in that game. Like there are a lot of question marks here for sure. And then we have Lamar Jackson. So I don't know. It's a tough slate for sure. It's going to be interesting to break things down because you have to consider motivation along with all these injuries, and we'll do that here in just 1 second. But first, quick reminder, we are doing this every Monday and Thursday right here on the Numberfire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Final recap podcast of the year will be up on Monday. That'll be at the regular time, 9 a.m. Eastern on YouTube, and also up on the Numberfire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. I will be elsewhere, so we'll see how that goes. Thursday's preview podcast for Week 17 will be a bit later than usual because it is the day after Christmas, and I don't want to work on a rundown on Christmas, so we're going to push that back a little bit. On Thursday, we will have Heat Check preview podcasts throughout the playoffs, though, so make sure you are subscribed on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and while you're there, please leave a rating and review as well, because those do help us out a ton. And also, while you're there, check out the FanDuel YouTube page and subscribe to that, because we do have this live. We weren't live the past couple of times because Cal and I were in Puerto Rico, which made it kind of tough, but we'll be live, I believe, from here on out. Let's dive into the injury news for week number 16 on the main slate. The Raiders were very gracious. They blessed us with some injury news early, but it's for an unfortunate reason here because John Gruden announced that Josh Jacobs will not play this week due to a shoulder injury. Deandre Washington is $5,600. And when Jacobs was out in week 14, Washington's role was awesome. So how much Deandre Washington for you this week, Brandon, with Josh Jacobs out?
I mean, all. Really, like in a cash game, I think you just put him in, take the savings, get up to Lamar Jackson. For tournaments, I understand that he'll probably be around 40%, I would guess, somewhere
Yeah,
around
we
there.
got the news Wednesday, which means it's going to be very high.
So I could see pumping the brakes, but I mean, the thing for me is we saw the usage be there 2 weeks ago. We saw him basically get Josh Jacobs' role with the receiving work. He had 7 targets in that game. So, I mean, it's really, you can't ask for a whole lot more. You're just playing the kind of the variance card, hope that he only gets like 80 yards and doesn't score by trying to avoid him.
Yeah, I think that I will still be overweight on him in tournaments, despite the fact that he'll be very, very popular. He's $5,600. Like you said, he got 7 targets in that game. And even when they were down late in the fourth quarter, he had 3 carries and 2 targets, while Jalen Richard had 1 carry and 2 targets. So he was still running ahead of Richard, even when they were down pretty big. And that's reassuring for me, given that they are pretty big underdogs in this game against the Chargers. So I would like to be overweight on DeAndre Washington in tournaments. Like you said, I think that he is a must-have for cash games. His snap rate in that game was the 4th highest by a Raiders running back all year long. So it's higher than what Josh Jacobs has had in every game except for 3. And he got more targets in that game than Jacobs has had in any game this year. So I would say just lock him in pretty often. There is one really good pivot I like, who is $600 more in Devontae Freeman, but I think that you can use both. So let's do that instead. Dak Prescott limited in practice Wednesday due to a shoulder injury. Jason Garrett said Dak can't do much as of right now, but that injury happened in the first half. He played through it in the second half and seems in line to play this week. Cooper Rush, his backup, said that he played through a similar injury in college, but maybe that's Cooper Rush trying to be tough because he's Cooper Rush. But we'll talk more about that in the trend section. Nelson Aguilar and Lane Johnson still not practicing for the Eagles. Jordan Howard, shocker, limited yet again, but has still not been cleared for contact. So let's assume we have the same personnel this week as last week for the Eagles. How would you view them against the Cowboys?
I love Zach Ertz.
Mm-hmm.
His workload's just really good. It's really safe. They don't really have anybody else to throw the ball to. Miles Sanders, he's 7,400.
Yeah,
I mean, he's been getting featured role, like a featured role. I know that his really his only blemish is that game where he left with cramps, and we thought Boston Scott was going to take over or be a full-on committee. So for the price, I don't hate Miles Sanders, but it's really Zach Ertz is where I'm going to most.
Yeah, I think Miles Sanders is good. I think that it depends on how popular he winds up being, because there's some really good pivots around $7,400 if he winds up being like chalk. Specifically, Alvin Kamara is right there, and I think that he's really interesting. So, like, if he's going to be the chalk, I am okay pivoting off him in tournaments, but I'm going to have Miles Sanders for sure. I agree that it's Ertz, Sanders, a massive, massive cliff to everyone else. I liked Greg Ward last week, but that was because he was $4,900. And like my comp for him on Monday was Cole Beasley. And I'll pay $4,900 for Cole Beasley. It's a lot harder to pay $5,700 for Cole Beasley. So I think that's why I'm viewing the drop off from Sanders to the rest as being pretty cavernous.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, that's where I am. It's I don't think I'll even get to anybody other than those two for the Eagles.
And I don't know if you necessarily have to, because Carson Wentz's projected efficiency here, assuming Lane Johnson can't go, and he's day to day, I think he's more likely to play than Aguilar. I think that the projected efficiency for Wentz is not high, which is why I'm not overly inclined to use him either. Not official yet, but it does look like the Panthers are going to start Will Grier over Kyle Allen in Week 16. Greg Olsen is cleared concussion protocol. He is in line to return. I was not Grier's biggest fan coming out of college. He was an old, inexperienced prospect, which is not a good combination. Basically, Carson Wentz is the only quarterback who has had that combination who has, succeeded in the NFL. But Kyle Allen was 32nd in passing net expected points per dropback out of 41 qualified quarterbacks. So, like we talked about this with Drew Lock, it's within the range of outcomes that Grier is an upgrade. I liked Drew Lock a lot more than I liked Will Grier coming out, so I think I was more inclined to think that he'd be an upgrade. But what do you think about this Panthers offense against the Colts?
I almost did a full trend on them, but I didn't want to find out that they stuck with Kyle Allen or whatever happened. But
sure.
I mean, Greer averaged 6.3 yards per attempt in the preseason, just 61 pass attempts. We know that he has question marks based on his collegiate profile, as you mentioned. Uh, I mean, Christian McCaffrey, I think you're going to be higher on him than I am based on what I've gleaned at 10,800. We need him to we need this team to move the ball to get into scoring position, and I don't know if that'll be there. But again, Kyle Allen was terrible, and he still came through. So again, it just depends on how good you think Will Grier can be in his first game.
Yeah, I think that McCaffrey I'm less worried about because they're going to get the ball to him because they seem very intent on getting him this yards from scrimmage record. He played every snap last week in a game that meant literally nothing to them. Yeah. He played all but like 1 or 2 snaps against Atlanta, even though they were down like 50. He has 50 receiving yards in 5 straight games, including a $121 in one of them. And I think that the way we've been discussing him this year is like he was in a perfect lineup at 10-5 without a touchdown. So I don't really need them necessarily to score. I just need him to continue getting the usage he's getting.
Yeah. Look, the Colts are a slow offense. Yeah. The Panthers can't stop the run. The Colts could just try to grind this one out and take away play volume. And we could be looking at, I understand how good Christian McCaffrey is. I know that he can still get touches, but if you're going to give me Will Grier in limited snaps, like limited opportunities, I don't know if the touchdown equity will be there. Then again, we have DeAndre Washington, and if you just combine their prices, and you could get, I mean, Christian McCaffrey and DeAndre Washington for like, I don't know, $7,300, something like that. I don't know, but that makes it a lot easier to stomach.
What about like a DJ Moore type guy? Because the volume has been there, but the volume has been there from Kyle Allen. And we don't know for sure if the volume will be there from Will Grier because he could have a different playing style than Kyle Allen. DJ Moore is $6,600, and I like guys like him who have some speed when they're on turf. Like, I think that's always intriguing, but I don't know what the volume's going to look like because Grier, again, could be very different. I think the one positive for DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel is that you literally cannot be worse than Kyle Allen was on deep balls. I think that if Will Grier will be an upgrade anywhere, it would be on the deep ball because he did have good throw velocity at the combine, and he had good efficiency at West Virginia too. So I think if he's going to be an upgrade anywhere, it could be on the deep ball. But I just don't know where the volume's going to go. So what about the non-McCaffrey guys here?
I almost considered still writing up DJ Moore as a love because I assume the volume will be there because it's not even really like this team has other options they need to see. It's not like Washington. They're giving Steven Sims like a tryout down the stretch. Yeah. They don't really have that situation. So DJ Moore's still going to get volume. Curtis Samuel's still going to get volume, probably to a lesser degree, but I wouldn't write them off. And I mean, if you stack this game at all, if you have any appeal, like if you have any interest in it, it's going to be DJ Moore. It's going to be Christian McCaffrey, potentially Curtis Samuel. So I've thought about it. I don't know if I'll play Will Grier, even though he's only 6,000. I might if I'm playing. Let's say I'm playing 150 like lineups. I'll play some just in case, but not really going there outside of multi-entry.
Yeah, I think just to flesh out further, the reason why I'm not as intrigued to buy low on the Panthers as I was the Broncos is that Locke. I liked him a lot more as a prospect personally. He was a higher pick. He was not playing because he was an injured reserve, whereas Greer's been available all year and still didn't play. And like seeing Kyle Allen do what he did and still not getting to Will Grier until week 16 was a pretty big red flag. So that's the difference for me between these two. I still think it's within the range of outcomes that Greer's an improvement. And I want to account for that. But I think that I like McCaffrey. I like Moore, but there are more red flags with them than there have been pretty much all year. So I understand where you're coming from for sure. But I think McCaffrey's still someone I like a lot. Other quarterback news here. Looks like Daniel Jones is going to return as a Giants quarterback against Washington. We've talked on the recap podcast about how Jones is actually a downgrade sneakily from Eli. And this is a terrible pace game. So how are you feeling about the Giants here against Washington?
I've been less concerned about the pace for Washington because for Washington, they're not efficient enough and haven't been efficient enough to stay on the field and really waste the play volume for the other team. I don't know if the Giants with Daniel Jones can take advantage of that and stay on the field themselves and soak up extra play volume against the bad defense. So that's problematic for me. I mean, I still will have some interest in Saquon Barkley at $8,800, but he doesn't really score a whole lot of touchdowns when Daniel Jones was under center, so that's a problem. So I think I'm just I'm not off this offense entirely, but I'm definitely less intrigued than I was when Eli Manning was back there.
Yeah, I think when you combine the two things, the pace and Daniel Jones starting, it's hard to, like I could just go as Zeke at 87. I could jump down to Chris Carson at 82 as opposed to Saquon. I still have some Saquon because like when he's had good matchups this year, he's been fine. And he's still getting targets. So like Joe Mixon 78 too. So like there are good options. And I think that Barkley is going to grade out as being much lower on my priority list this week than he was last week. And I'm hoping people point chase. I think that the spot here is a lot worse than it was for Barkley last week. Christian Kirk didn't practice Wednesday due to an ankle issue, though it sounds like he's still in line to play. We'll talk more about that offense in the trend section. Juju Smith-Schuster was able to get in a limited practice on Wednesday. He was in line to return last week, but tweaked his knee late in the week in practice. Jamal Adams likely returning for the Jets. So are you going to use any of the Steelers here against the Jets?
No, I don't think so.
You know what this is, though?
It's a revenge game.
It is. For one Le'Veon Bell. He's $7,100, same salary as Kenyon Drake, who is going to be probably get some interest this week. I don't hate it.
I don't hate it. I don't love it. I mean, I've been playing Le'Veon Bell at a similar price in way better matchups, and it hasn't exactly paid off. I mean, maybe he'll run harder. Maybe he'll catch a little harder. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Maybe like
catch hard. That sounds like a really bad Will Ferrell movie.
Yeah, I mean, the Steelers Steelers defense is very, very good. They're third against the pass, first against the rush. Mm-hmm. Again, we played Le'Veon Bell at similar prices in good matchups. This is not a good matchup. So I know I'll have some of him, but he's not even close to a cash game consideration.
No. You're right.
He would be at this price against like the Dolphins. I'd be like, well, and I've been playing him there, but I'm not doing it this week.
Like he actually looked pretty good in his return last week. Just they were so far behind. I don't think Devlin Hodges can get the Jets in a major hole. So I don't want a ton of Le'Veon Bell, but I do want some Le'Veon Bell paired with the Jets defense at $3,600. DJ Chark returned to a limited practice Wednesday. It seems like he's in line to return this week. I'm sorry, Brandon. Likely kills the Chris Conley dream. Are you using any Jags here against the Falcons?
Yeah, actually, if DJ Chark is good to go, I like DJ Chark in this matchup because I kind of like the Falcons, and I'll talk more about them in the trend section. And if Chark were to miss, then I can go back to Chris Conley, potentially Dede Westbrook. So I think it's kind of a win-win in a way. And, Chris Conley went to college at Georgia.
Oh, yeah.
His wife was former Falcons cheerleader. I mean, it's kind of a homecoming situation. I'm not saying, just kind of.
I was trying to think if he had played in this in the Dome. He did not play here, I don't think. They played there in a preseason game last year when he was with the Chiefs. So there you go. Familiar stomping grounds for Chris Conley.
But I like Chark if he plays, and if not, then I think Chris Conley is a fine pivot if you're in on the Falcons, because this is one of those games where these teams don't have anything to play for.
What about Leonard Fournette? He had $7,500. Still a good usage last week. 15 carries, 7 targets, 96% snap rate. I think he kind of is what he is. Is he someone who will make your player pool knowing that he is what he is?
Yeah, because I think this game has a little bit of, I don't want to say full-on shootout appeal, but it could kind of score some points because Atlanta is apparently going to throw the ball a lot to Julio Jones, and that can lead to scoring for the Falcons. So
good things happen when you throw to Julio.
Yeah, I mean, Fournette has 6 or more targets, 7 straight games. The real issue is just the touchdown equity.
Yeah, and the efficiency is definitely not there either. But that's fine. Also, I think that I would probably put him below Miles Sanders. I don't know. It's tight between those two, but I think they're both like third tier dudes at running back. I would say.
Yeah, they're not priority plays.
Correct. We got another Number Fire FanDuel free play lined up for this week exclusively for FanDuel Podcast Network listeners. The top 3 finishers all get free Number Fire premium subscriptions, and the top 5 spots get cash. To submit your lineup and get entered, this week's URL is fanduel.com/league/Brandon. That's fanduel.com/league/Brandon to enter and get your shot at free Number Fire premium and cash. Let's move into the trends discussion here for week number 16, starting off with the Browns. Brandon, technically not eliminated, and no one's going to use them this week because they are facing the Ravens, coming off a major letdown. The problem is I like to view offenses by, did they meet expectations or did they not? And the Browns have failed to meet expectations in consecutive games now, and they're facing the Ravens, who are very good. So talk me through this offense here and whether we can still go to them despite some rough spots and a tough matchup.
Yeah, so I mean, this week there are 2 games where both sides have greater than a 1% chance to make the playoffs. We have the Saints and Titans and the Cowboys and Eagles. You'll talk about both of those games to a certain degree in the trend section, but there's only one other game where both teams are still alive, even if it's a long shot, and this is one of those games. Browns, like you said, not eliminated, just a 1% chance to make the playoffs according to Number Fire. So, I mean, you have that going for you. But the over-under is 48 points, to the third highest on the main slate. It's a 1.5 above the 4th place game. There are relevant plays on both sides of the ball. We always know that Lamar Jackson deserves attention. Baltimore, though, a 10-point favorite despite being on the road and having lost to Cleveland earlier this year, 40-25 in late September. Not putting any stock into that, but it is what it is. I just want to look and see if we can trust the Browns to keep it close at all. Since trading for Marcus Peters, the Ravens rank first in the NFL in passing net expected points per dropback allowed and passing success rate allowed, which is not good. So I wanted to look at Baker Mayfield against top 8 pass defenses this year. 6 games for him qualify. He has averaged just 211 yards per game, 1.2 touchdowns, 0.8 picks. The efficiency's not there. I mean, he plays to about the NFL average against top 8 opponents. So, no, not playing worse than expected, but not matchup proof by any stretch of the imagination, which should not surprise us. So, that could sour us on not only the Browns, but the Ravens too. But again, there are fantasy relevant plays in this game. Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham have great market shares in recent weeks. Since getting Kareem Hunt in the lineup, Landry leads the team with 28% of the targets. Beckham's at 27%. Hunt is third at 19%. Beckham's actually 4th in weighted opportunity rating in this 6-game stretch. Landry's 12th, according to fantasyadhd.com. They've got great roles. We know that they should trail. Kareem Hunt is 4th in target share among running backs in the sample. He's only $6,100. We don't generally like to play running backs on huge underdogs and guys who are really only in play for the passing work. We like when there's both. But again, $6,100, not the worst price for Kareem Hunt. So, if we're going to stack the Browns, we have 3 places to look, not really touching Nick Chubb this week. So it's more a matter of whether or not we think the Browns can keep it close enough to load up on Lamar Jackson and potentially bring it back with Mark Andrews, maybe Marquise Brown. So any thoughts here, Jim, on the Cleveland offense?
I'm not really that interested, I guess. I don't know. That could be a mistake because, like you said, they're not technically done. There is a very convoluted path to them making it. But it's just really hard for me to target them when they've, again, I like to view things from failing to meet expectations. And they've had amazing matchups each of the past 2 weeks. And a couple of teams have failed against the Bengals. So I was kind of willing to overlook that one. But the Cardinals one was confounding, and they looked terrible there. Baker has not played well the past 2 weeks. I love Baker, but his past 2 games have not been good. And I think that it's still an 11-game slate. There are not a ton of guys I want to use on this slate, but it's still hard for me to talk myself into a team that I don't like when I have other options elsewhere. Jarvis is the same salary as Devontae Parker. He is $200 cheaper than Cortland Sutton. He is $300 cheaper than A.J. Brown. I like all those guys. T.Y. Hilton's kind of interesting, I think, at 73 too. Beckham's 67. He's right by DJ Moore, right by Michael Gallup. So, I have guys I like more in each range. And it's really hard for me to force it against a really good defense on a team that might have quit, honestly. So it's really hard. I don't think I'm going to get here. I'll get here with Lamar Jackson, but I don't want to use Marquise Brown or Mark Andrews either. So it literally might just be Lamar Jackson. I think that Mark Ingram is more in play than he has been previously because his workload has been less bad, I would say. He's getting some targets in the red zone at least and stuff. So maybe I go Mark Ingram, but I honestly think it's mostly just Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, it's tough because the expectation here, I mean, Baltimore's favored by 10. So the expectation is that they play from ahead. Mm-hmm. And we don't really want to chase. I think it's a common misconception to chase the volume from a trailing passing offense. We want efficiency. Right. We want touchdowns. But we're also looking at, I'm not really touching Baker Mayfield regardless. So we could be looking at elevated volume for 2 high usage receivers already.
Yeah.
So I have a little bit of interest in that, especially if I'm loading up on Lamar Jackson. I would do like a weird stack of like Lamar Jackson and Jarvis Landry.
Yeah, that's not weird. I think that's logical.
So, I mean, I have that much interest. Like, I have interest to that degree, but, I was hoping maybe I could see something. But
I think the one thing that bolsters your argument is that the Jets did move the ball on the Ravens last week, especially early in that game. Like the first half, the Jets were competitive. Jamison Crowder had some really nice plays. My boy Vincent Smith got like 5 targets and caught a couple passes. So like that's good. And I think it gives you a little bit of hope in using the Browns. And I agree that like if I'm going to have, 10 Lamar Jackson lineups, it does make a lot of sense to have Landry and Beckham, maybe some Kareem Hunt, probably not, in those stacks. I have to, I think it would be hard for me to get to them outside of those Lamar Jackson lineups. Let's move now to the Dallas Cowboys because last week I felt pretty good about my lineups on Sunday going into the late slate because I had a lot of Jared Goff. Whoops. I had a lot of Baker Mayfield. Whoops. And I had a lot of the Cowboys offense. Chris Carson, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey. They were all my core. They were all awesome. And I had a bunch of Cowboys. Then Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and Randall Cobb combined for 22 receiving yards. They had less than Tavon Austin, Blake Jarwin, and Jason Witten. It was bad. This week, I want to get in on them again, even with Dak dealing with a shoulder injury. Sounds like he's good to go. It's just hard to know the best way to use the Cowboys, assuming that Dak is healthy. We got 7 games since the Cowboys bye week, and in that time, nobody has 20% of the team's targets. Michael Gallup, he does lead the team at 19.9%, but it's Amari Cooper at 19.2%. Nobody has more than 30% of the targets, and nobody has more than 20% of the red zone targets. So they've kind of become the Saints without Michael Thomas from an overall usage perspective. It's a super spread out offense. That sucks. But they still had upside because Dak has been so good. It's just hard to know who is going to go off and when. The one exception to that has been Ezekiel Elliott. He has 4 targets in 4 straight games. He has at least 29 adjusted opportunities, which is carries plus 2x targets in all those games. He had hit 29 adjusted opportunities just 3 times in the first 10 games this year, and he's at 4 straight now. Zeke is averaging 20.9 FanDuel points the past 4 games, and his minimum is 14.6. He is $8,700 or 88. I might have written that down wrong. He is 87. Haha, I was right. But I think he's still the best way to get access to the Cowboys here. And I would say that he is among the expensive running backs, one of, if not my favorites. After that, it's kind of murky, though. I think that Michael Gallup is my favorite again at $6,500. He leads the team in targets. He leads them in air yards. He leads them in WOPR since the bye. I don't know if it's Whopper or Whoper, so I'm just going to say WOPR. He is $1,200 cheaper than Amari Cooper. I dig that. Cooper's still really good at $7,700, and I'm going to have a lot of him too, but I'm good ranking him a peg beneath Gallup. Cobb is $5,300. His snap rate has been under 50% in 2 of the past 4 games. His target share is 15% since the bye. I don't think I can go there even in game stacks. So I think I am going to use all of Zeke, Gallup, and Cooper, putting them in that order. Zeke is the only cash game play to me, though, especially with Dak banged up. Gallup's not entirely off the map if I'm in that range. And I will be a lot less interested in the Cowboys if Dak Prescott does not get in a full practice on Friday. So, Brandon, how are you viewing this Cowboys offense? Let's assume that Dak is good to go.
Yeah, you're a little bit higher on Elliott than I am just because Philadelphia is, I mean, They're in the playoff hunt, obviously, but they're a good rush defense. They're second in rushing success rate allowed to backs. Elliott's been getting targets to help out, like you said. So I'd still rank him number one, but I think I'm a little bit
Okay.
less convinced, especially when you factor in that Dak Prescott probably not going to be 100% no matter what. But I have Michael Gallup number two, just like you do. Look, if he's getting similar or the same usage or even slightly better usage than someone who's $1,200 more, I mean, I don't really see the case to go Amari Cooper over Gallup outside of differentiation. So I think Gallup has good usage for someone priced at $6,500. But I nobody's even at 20% of the targets since their bye. That's just
Yeah.
it's really really tough.
Yeah, it is tough. And I think that, like I said, that's why I don't even think like if I were to fill out a cash game lineup right now, I don't think I'd have Zeke in it, but he's a consideration there. So I would phrase it that way, I guess. Like I think that there are other
Yeah,
guys at different price points I like, but in that price range, like I would rank him above Saquon. I'd probably go Zeke over Chris Carson. That one's close though, for a cash game.
interesting.
Interesting, bad or
Interesting. I mean,
okay,
if
all
you're
right.
getting defensive, then maybe you're
No, I'm gonna get defensive.
no, just like Carson should have. Well, we know Chris Carson's going to get like 24 carries.
Yeah.
Elliott will probably get there too, but I mean, the matchup's better for Carson. So
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. It's tight. I would have the biggest trepidation in ranking him over Carson if that helps. They're 1-2 for me in the upper range.
yeah,
But I'm also okay just jumping down to Joe Mixon, honestly. Like he's 78. He's awesome. We're gonna talk about Devontae Freeman a bit later. I would consider him just going full on cheap running back in cash with Deandre Washington. But I think that Zeke's in the discussion at least. Speaking of Joe Mixon, Brandon, let's talk about this Bengals offense. And the Bengals stink. However, the Dolphins stink too. This game is really fun. I kind of love it. You're going to go through the Bengals and what they've done since Andy Dalton came back, because I think that they're pretty fun this week. There is some rain concern. I'll note that. Some wind concern. However, that would not quash Joe Mixon. Squash? Joe Mixon. Go ahead. I'll let you talk now.
yeah. So you want to kind of prioritize games where there's something on the line in terms of playoffs. At this point, this is definitely not one of those
Oh,
games.
no, there's something on the line.
Yes.
Joe Burrow or Tua Tagovailoa are on the line.
Yes. So that's on the line, but that's a negative because these teams could tank, but that's really not what they've shown down the stretch. Miami's 3-4 over the past 7 games. Cincinnati picked up a win 3 weeks ago, and they went back to Andy Dalton. So for whatever reason, I think they're trying, and that's at least intriguing. And that helps us consider Joe Mixon, who has definitely emerged as a back with one of the best workloads in football in recent weeks. He's priced up a bit to $7,800, but address the Dolphins, who are 29th in rushing success rate allowed to backs, 26th in yards before contact allowed to backs. Miami's actually favored in this one by a point, but I don't think that matters. Mixon has a decent 10% target share in this recent sample of his uptick. He's not completely irrelevant in the passing game, but he's going to get carries, and that's very enticing to me. And the rest of the offense, I'm also interested in to a degree, but the number one outside of Joe Mixon is just Tyler Boyd. He's affordable at $6,300 against the NFL's worst adjusted pass defense. Last week with no Auden Tate, but with John Ross and Andy Dalton, Boyd had 24% of the targets in a tough matchup. Alex Erickson, Tyler Eifert had 17%. So I think Boyd is very easy to project with a solid target floor. I think he's in play for cash games with such a soft matchup and such a good price. And then we can flip it back with Devontae Parker, who I've been stacking for a long time. And I mean, it's definitely paid off for a while. I stacked him before it started to pay off, but no reason not to do it again. So I think that Parker, Boyd, or Mixon, Parker, I think they're both in play. Both quarterbacks are $7,400 or cheaper. Andy Dalton himself is $7,100. These teams could want to take the gas, like foot off the gas, but that's not what we've seen. And we know where the ball's going for the Bengals against the worst defense in football. So how confident are you in Joe Mixon? Any interest in Tyler Boyd? What are your thoughts here?
Love Joe Mixon. Everyone else loves him too. He is number one in fan share tags by a gap. It's tier one Joe Mixon, tier two everybody else. So I'm not alone in that, but I think it's justified. His workload has just been stupid, and his efficiency has gone up too. With Cordy Glenn being back, Mixon's rushing success rate has gone up 5 percentage points the past 4 weeks, and that's even one of the games that Ryan Finley started. His yards per carry is up a yard. I know yards per carry is a terrible stat, but like when it's coupled with other advanced metrics that are much better, it's interesting. So like he has more work, more efficiency, facing a terrible team. He's $7,800. He's very easy to justify. And he might wind up being the most expensive guy in like my default lineup. And I'm okay with that. Like, that's fine. I would not object to that. But he's really good. And I love Joe Mixon. Tyler Boyd, also very good. I would be lower on him if the wind were to stay where it is. But he gets good targets. We know he can convert on those targets. He kind of has like the Cortland Sutton factor where I think you talked about that once, but like he can kind of turn volume into production by himself because he's good, and that's valuable. So I like Boyd. I don't think I will get to either quarterback. I would definitely prefer Fitzpatrick at $7,400 because he does run a bit, but the Bengals defense showing life the past 5 weeks really lowers my interest in using Fitzpatrick. So I think for me, it's Boyd, it is Mixon, it is Devontae Parker. Very okay with him. And I'm very interested in all of them. I just don't know if I'll get to anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with mini stacks.
Yeah, I love mini stacks. Yeah,
this qualifies. I think that look, this is a spot where neither team has anything to play for in terms of like in a positive sense. Mm-hmm. So that's a little bit concerning. But we know where the ball's going, and that helps. Yeah,
and both teams are pretty fast too. The Bengals have not been as fast in Andy Dalton Part 2 as Andy Dalton Part 1, but they're still generally more of an up-tempo team than a slow-paced team. So I think it's a really good game, and I think that you were talking about mini stacks. I love mini stacks because they allow me to stack 2 games within one lineup, and I always find that very intriguing. So I am going to have those for sure this week. Let's move now to the Seattle Seahawks defense, because I think that when we talk about the Seahawks Cardinals game, we know we're going to want to use Chris Carson here. He is $8,200. He's facing a bad rush defense and a pace-up spot as a double-digit favorite. He is so easy to justify. I probably should rank him above Zeke. You talked me into that. But the passing game is a bit different. If we're going to use Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, we need the Cardinals to score at least a point and keep this thing from getting out of hand. Because we know the Seahawks are just going to ground and pound if they can, and that's not a lock to happen. But the Seahawks defense isn't exactly dominant. They enter Week 16 ranked 14th against the pass and 13th overall defensively, according to Number Fire's metrics. So they're about average. They allowed Andy Dalton, Teddy Bridgewater, Jared Goff, Matt Schaub, and Jameis Winston to all have above average efficiency against them this year. And Dalton, Teddy, and Jameis all did so in Seattle. Actually, Goff did too. Kyler Murray hasn't been good. He's been bad against average teams this year. Actually, he's been actually bad against them. But we've also seen him pop against good defenses. He kept things tight with the 49ers in their second matchup this year. And playing well against a mediocre defense, I think because of that, we can say is within Murray's range of outcomes. And that means that we can stack this game, even if we had to do so with caution. We also know the pieces we'd want to use in game stacks here on both sides. The Seahawks do not have Josh Gordon due to a suspension. Opens up a couple extra targets. We had this offense in weeks 7 to 9, which was after Will Dissly's injury and before Josh Gordon's arrival, where Tyler Lockett had 7, 6, and 18 targets in those 3 games. He had 42% of the deep targets and 4 of 9 red zone targets. For $7,600, he is elite if you think the Cardinals keep this game close. DK Metcalf and Jacob Hollister are cheap enough where they can work as standalone plays. Metcalf got a lot of high leverage work in that time. His salary is back down to $6,300. Hollister is $57,000. He has 19.9% of the targets since his role expanded, same number as Michael Gallup, which is very interesting. But then on the Cardinals side, we know how to run it back there too, because Christian Kirk is $59,000, Kenyon Drake is $71,000. I think that looking at this game, Carson's the only guy I'd feel great about for cash games, though I would say that Kirk Metcalf and Hollister are at least within the discussion for cash games as well. But overall, I do like this game. I am always very skeptical of stacking Seahawks games because they love to run so much. But I think that I am higher on this game than I've been on most Seahawks games this year. So, Brandon, what are you seeing with this one here between the Seahawks and the Cardinals?
I want to love it. I do love it, but I have concerns. I know you said the same thing. Russell Wilson, look, I don't like to look just at fantasy points, but
they do matter at a certain point.
At a certain point, guess out of the past 8 games, guess how many times Russell Wilson's gone over 20 FanDuel points?
Past 8?
Yeah.
Once.
Yes.
When was that?
7 weeks ago. I know that. I don't know which matchup it was, but
it was he's had when he dropped a 30, almost a 40 burger on the Buccaneers because they got down early.
Yep. 5 straight with fewer than 20 FanDuel points, and it's not because he's bad. Like
he's
Seattle's
good.
sixth. Seattle is 6th in adjusted passing efficiency. So I understand why we would like this game, and I like it a lot, but I'm a little bit nervous. And I know that a lot of this sample has to do with like when Tyler Lockett wasn't himself, and Tyler Lockett is very good. Russell Wilson can pick up a lot of yardage just by throwing near Tyler Lockett. So that helps. And really, I'm as high on the Seahawks as I can get, which is I'm going to play a lot of them, but I'm not going to go full out because I'm nervous that they will just give the ball to Chris Carson. But that still leaves me with Chris Carson as a core play, as a cash game play. I have him. I'm going to play him in cash games. I think that the rushing attempt floor is at least like 22 when you factor in the volume from the Cardinals. So I love Carson, and I will run it back.
Yeah. With Russ, I think that seeing him play well last week was very encouraging because we heard Pete Carroll say that Tyler Lockett's finally healthy, and it looked that way too. Like he looked good. Lockett had 9 targets. I think 4 of them were deep in that game. And with how efficient Russell Wilson is when targeting Tyler Lockett, it is a major, major loss when Lockett is either out or not at full health. And seeing that was good. It's not enough for me to feel great about him unless I think the Cardinals keep pace. So, I guess the hope is the Cardinals get the ball to start the game. Kyler Murray runs for 97 yards and then puts the Seahawks in a negative script, and then we can get some fun Russ. So I think that the way that I play quarterback is I'm never going all in on one quarterback, which means I'm leaving myself inherently some wiggle room in case game script goes away from them. But I think that I think that there are a lot of ways that this game could be fun. So I'm okay having Russell Wilson be one of my highest owned quarterbacks in a tournament just because it's not a position where I really focus on just one guy to begin with.
Yeah, and I think this week, I don't want to speak for you, but I think it's Lamar Jackson in cash games, and then everyone else is.
I don't know if we'll get to Lamar in cash. He's really expensive. He's 93. I love him for tournaments.
Yeah. Even with
I don't want to spend that much in cash. I really don't.
Even with DeAndre Washington there.
I don't want to get there in cash games. If I get there, cool. If I go DeAndre Washington, Christian Kirk, Jacob Hollister, and I wind up having the money to pay for Lamar Jackson, sweet. And I think all those guys are in play for cash games. But I can never make an expensive quarterback a priority for cash games. That's the way that I'd phrase it.
Yeah, I might have to because I hate quarterback this week.
Yeah. I mean, you could go Lamar Jackson, or you could go Gardner Minshew at 68, or you could go Will Greer at 6,000.
Yeah. You could.
This is a good test of how much you hate yourself this week, and I think that's always a fun slate. Let's move now to the Falcons. We got to see them without Calvin Ridley for the first time last week, and Julio Jones got 116 targets, which is more than he had the entire year heading into that game. So let's talk about the Falcons here against a Jaguars team that is given up outside of the fourth quarter last week, where your boy Chris Conley would not let them give up. Brandon, what do you see with the Falcons in this game?
Well, it's in Atlanta, so it's indoors, so we don't have weather concerns. And look, if you're not, this slate has very few games with realistic playoff implications. So if I don't have playoff implications, I might as well chase a good, controlled environment, some possible playmakers, and we have that with the Falcons because without Calvin Ridley and Mohamed Sanu, They started to use Julio Jones last week. I guess you had to be without both Calvin Ridley and Sanu to really give Julio Jones some work. But he had 20 targets, 13 catches, 134 yards, 2 touchdowns. People might say it's just point chasing to go back to Julio Jones this week, but I really don't think it is because the usage was there. It's not like he did that on even if he caught all his targets, it'll be 13 targets. But with Mike Evans done for the year, Julio now leads the NFL in air yards per game at 119.2. He also has 9.8 targets per game to rank tied for 4th. The overall market share is not super elite at 25%, but Atlanta throws a lot. They're 6th in pass rate over expectation, which just adjusts for win probability. It's something I like to look at. We know Atlanta throws the ball, so that helps. And again, 9.8 targets per game, nothing to write off. Jones has not had fewer than 7 targets or 98 air yards in a game all season. He's had at least 23% of the targets in 10 of 13 games. And since getting rid of Jalen Ramsey, the Jaguars are 28th in target success rate allowed to receivers, so it's a really good spot. Austin Hooper and Russell Gage each had 6 targets last week without Ridley. The Jaguars are 31st in target success rate allowed to tight ends, so I kind of like Austin Hooper here as well. And look, we're kind of drawing some blanks at quarterback. Maybe Matt Ryan at $7,700. He's been just kind of average on the full season. My biggest concern is that he hasn't thrown for more than 2 touchdowns since week 6. Just 6.8 yards per attempt since returning in week 10 with kind of average efficiency. It's a good matchup. It's indoors, so maybe Matt Ryan would be somewhat on the radar for cash games. And then we both like Devontae Freeman again this week at just $6,200. So his workload's been good. And I like this Falcons offense more than I probably should. Again, they're not in the playoff hunt, but we're going to have to take some stabs on teams that are eliminated, and this would be one of the first places I look. So what are your thoughts on Atlanta this week?
Yeah, I think that Devontae Freeman is pretty clearly the standout here. $6,200. He got kind of a rule change last week, I guess, with that snap rate being high. It's his, I think, his second highest snap rate of the year. I think he had 90% in that game where Quadri Olson got concussed, and they had no one else active. But he gets targets. He gets rushing attempts. He didn't do a lot last week, but that was their first game with Chris Lindstrom playing the entire game, the entire year, their first round pick guard. I loved Chris Lindstrom as a prospect coming out. So I think that getting him back is pretty impactful. And now they're at home against the 30th ranked rush defense, as opposed to on the road against the 49ers. So I would agree with you that Devontae Freeman he would not be number 1 in cash because DeAndre Washington is there, but like, he's in that third running back discussion. I think that Joe Mixon's probably in there too. But like, I think that DeAndre Washington is around, or sorry, I would say that Devontae Freeman is in that third running back discussion for sure. So we're on the same page with him very much. I think that I agree with you that using Julio Jones is not point chasing. You know, I think that he got a role change last week. It's okay to react to a role change. He is at home. He's facing the Jaguars, not a defense that we should fear anymore, like you said. So I'm going to probably, I don't know if Julio's not going to be priority because he's $8,000. I like Michael Thomas a lot this week. He is $9,000. I like Amari. I like Lockett. So I'm not going to put Julio as being a priority, but I think he's in play. Russell Gage is 51. He's kind of like Greg Ward, where it's like, you're probably going to get 50 yards, maybe get a touchdown. But like that can pay off, especially when you're at home with a pretty good implied total. And he's been getting a good number of red zone looks. So I don't think that Russell Gage is entirely off the map for me. He's not a priority because like the yardage upside is pretty muted. But like I could see myself getting there for sure. Austin Hooper. So like there are a lot of dudes I don't mind here. Austin Hooper is $6,000. Sweet. Because like Gage and Hooper both got 6 targets last week. Julio's probably not going to get 20 targets again this week. That's going to redistribute a couple. So I would rank them Devontae, Julio, Hooper, Gage, but I have at least some interest in every single one of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the few offenses really where there are 4 guys who I like.
Yeah.
I mean, especially for a team that doesn't have anything to play for. That's always a little bit concerning, but I mean, you don't give Julio Jones coming off of a shoulder injury 20 targets if you're just going to not use him at all the next week. So,
and they've been eliminated for a while.
Yeah.
And they've still been playing hard. So I think that's encouraging for sure. Like they blew out the Panthers and they won against San Francisco. So,
and any Matt Ryan?
I don't know.
I might have to like. Okay, so we like Devontae Freeman and DeAndre Washington. I really do think that I'm gonna get to Lamar in my main lineup, but if I don't, Matt Ryan has obviously question marks, but I think that at $7,700, he's in the conversation.
So this is treasonous, but I do like Ryan Tannehill, and he's only $100 more. His team has something on the line.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot tougher matchup, and it is outdoors, but the wind looks fine in Nashville. So I would probably go Ryan Tannehill over Matt Ryan in a cash game. And like, you know how much I hate Ryan Tannehill. I'm still very willing to use him this week, despite my utter hatred and obvious bias against him.
Yeah, I think it's Lamar. I think it's depending on how you feel about Russ and how confident you are that he has to throw. And then for me, it's probably Matt Ryan and Tannehill is like the next place I would look.
I think that's fair. Let's move now to that actually that game between the Saints and the Titans. We're going to talk about this game as a whole in the bookmakers section, but I do want to talk specifically about Alvin Kamara because he has not scored a touchdown since week 3. Back in week 3, just to give you a heads up about how long ago this was, Marcus Mariota was still the Titans starting quarterback. Rest in peace. Daniel Jones led a comeback win over the Buccaneers in his first NFL start. So a couple of things have changed since the last time Alvin Kamara scored a touchdown, and yet the touchdownless drought is up to 9 games. This has led to a dip in Kamara's salary, all the way down to $7,200. He's in a game where the Saints will want to win, which could mean that we would want to invest in Kamara. It's just hard to know whether we should keep doing so. I've lost a lot of money on this dude this year, so it's hard to get over that mental block of, I'm going to use him again. Why not? On the one hand, he's still getting awesome volume. Since the bye week, he is averaging 11 carries and 8 targets per game. That is 27 adjusted opportunities per game. For $7,200, you'll take that every time. And the floor has been there too. He has double-digit FanDuel points in every game except for one since his last touchdown. He's averaged 11.5 FanDuel points per game in that span. If he were to score, Alvin Kamara would pay off very, very easily. It's just hard to say if he scores when the Saints are so happy to give goal line usage to others. But it's not like they're going elsewhere. They've just been super pass happy on the goal line recently. They've had 14 plays inside the 5 since Kamara returned from that ankle injury. And 10 of those 14 have been passes versus 4 rushes. Kamara does have 2 of the 4 rush attempts, while Latavius Murray has 1. Taysom Hill has none. Drew Brees is a rushing touchdown. The Titans rank 4th against the rush and 16th against the pass, which I think is actually a good thing for Kamara because it should favor Kamara over Latavius. So I'm inclined to go with Kamara again. He has major imperfections, but his floor is still very good. His salary accounts for his imperfections. And I think he's one of those guys that's at least in consideration for cash. He's not a priority there, but he's a consideration there. So I've got a lot of cash game running backs I'd consider. I wish some of them were on the Saturday slate so that I could use them there, but they're not. But Brandon, I know you are generally more wary of Kamara than I am by a pretty wide margin. So what are your thoughts on Kamara this week at $7,200?
The price has drawn me back in. He's not $8,200. He's not even $7,900. He's $7,200.
Yeah.
I think that is a much more appropriate price for what Alvin Kamara's role has been, especially again near the goal line. And it's not like it's Dalvin Cook kind of not getting some goal line touches. It's the Saints will literally throw the ball to anybody. They will hand the ball to anybody near the end zone because they just want to score. And that is good for a team, bad for fantasy. And so my biggest concern always with Alvin Kamara is just whether or not he converts on the touchdowns. Now this week, it's not a good rushing matchup, but the Titans are 20th in target success rate allowed to running backs. Kamara's got such great target volume that helps. I'm probably going to get there. I think price considered, he's a top 3 play. That doesn't mean that I'm going to play him absolutely, but I think really when you adjust for that low of a salary for someone like Alvin Kamara in this game with something on the line, he's one of the best plays on the slate.
I should have a spreadsheet with this, but I was trying to find the last time he was $7,200, and that salary change is very justified because again, there are concerns. He hasn't looked as good since he came back. I thought he showed some burst on Monday night. It didn't translate into a ton, but I thought he looked good. Like, hashtag watch the tape, bro. Thought he looked pretty good. And he's $7,200. So, like, I know this dude has contributed significantly to some bad bankroll stuff this year, but I don't want that to push me off someone who is objectively in a very good spot. I like this game in general. We're going to talk more about this game in a second here. So we'll talk about that in just 1 second. But first, this week we are blessed with a 3-game NFL slate on Saturday, and FanDuel has a big prize pool for the occasion. For just a $9 entry fee, compete for $500,000 in prizes, including $100,000 to first place. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today. Eligibility restrictions apply. Let's take a look at what bookmakers are saying about this slate. Let's talk more about the rest of that Titans-Saints game. The game has the second highest total on the slate. It has stayed steady since open, but 73% of the money is on the over, according to OddsFire. So we talked about Kamara, but what else grabs your attention in this game?
Michael Thomas. I don't know if I'll get there very often. He's not going to be someone I get to in cash games. I'd rather pay up for Lamar Jackson in cash games than
I was about to ask about that, because I think that is like an interesting decision point, because usually I'm spending it for running back and can't get to Michael Thomas, but like if you're going to spend it for a wide receiver in a cash game, it's Michael Thomas.
That's true.
And I would actually prioritize him over Lamar, I think.
I can see the case. I probably should, like, mathematically, because other quarterbacks would have they're easier to project than wide receivers, but I don't know. I guess I hadn't thought about that till just now. But I mean, the fact that Michael Thomas is in cash game consideration pretty much tells you everything you need to know.
Right.
I like Ryan Tannehill. Again, if I don't get to Lamar and I get scared off of Russell Wilson, I think Ryan Tannehill, who leads the NFL in passing net expected points per drop back this year, is very much in play.
He doesn't? Are you excluding sacks?
No.
Lamar. So you're sorry, Lamar Jackson. Sorry, I think you said Ryan Tannehill, and I was offended. Sorry. I misheard you. Continue. Sorry.
Well, my issue is with AJ Brown at $7,200.
Yeah. Sorry, I was so confused, but we're good now. Lamar does. You're right. I thought you were talking about Tannehill, and I was like, how dare you? Whew. I had a heart attack. Continue talking about AJ Brown.
I mean, look, he's $7,200. He 13 targets last game. He's really emerged as like the number one receiver in this offense. He's up to a 29% target share over the past, I think, four games. So I'm going to play him because I like this game, but I'm a little bit nervous about getting too confident in AJ Brown. So I don't know what your thoughts are there.
I like him a pretty decent amount. Marshawn Lattimore is very good, and that is something to consider when discussing AJ Brown, because he's been such a focal point that we know teams are going to prioritize trying to stop him. But we saw a role change with AJ Brown. I think it was 3 weeks ago. I'm trying to pull up the actual numbers here. Scrolling. But we saw a role change where his snap rates got above 90% for the first time all year in a game where AJ Brown or Corey Davis was active. And in those 3 games since, AJ Brown has 29.6% of the targets. He has 33% of the deep targets, 21% of the red zone targets. And my issue with AJ Brown has always been it's spread out targets and a pass first offense. The targets are no longer spread out, or a run first offense. The targets are no longer spread out, and it can't be as run heavy of an offense if they're playing the Saints. So I think that AJ Brown is very much in play at 72. I have concerns about the Marshawn Lattimore thing, but I am more inclined to use AJ Brown now than I have been any game all year.
Yeah, I feel like this one has, I don't know. I feel like this game could just bust a little bit.
It could. I mean, any game could, though. You can say that about like Seahawks Cardinals, which has the highest total on the slate.
Yeah, but I'm gonna stack it a lot, but I actually don't feel that great about it.
No, I agree. That's justifiable. The Saints are outdoors.
I feel like I'm stacking it out of obligation, but I have both teams 22nd or worse in adjusted pace. Like I'm a low.
That's fair.
I think I'm stacking this one out of obligation.
I
don't like that.
I felt the same way about Titans Texans last week. I didn't wind up stacking it, which was fine. I had some AJ Brown obviously, but like and some other guys in that game. But it hit the under. So like you don't have to do it. I just think that I like this. So I didn't like that game that much. I like this one more, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, we didn't mention Jared Cook revenge game.
What? Jared Cook. Oh my gosh. He's been on like so many teams that I just like forget.
Yeah.
When was he on the Titans?
They drafted him.
Did they? Oh wow, he was on the Titans for 4 years.
Yeah.
Man. That is a throwback. I just remember the St. Louis days for some reason. Because I always had him in like season logs. Well, it's the year Jared Cook finally breaks out. Oh man. Okay. Interesting.
I remember because Jared Cook was the first guy at the combine I watched. And I was like, this dude has crazy athletic. I remember his vertical leap when I was like, I don't know, I probably would have been like 14 or something. And I was like, this dude's going to be good. And it took a while, but you know, he really was good. So I'll always have that memory in my head.
Yeah. So revenge game narrative. However, he's 66. Zach Ertz is 69.
Yeah.
Going Zach Ertz whenever I can get there for sure. But hey, definitely would mention, I think I'm a little bit higher in this game than you, but I understand your concerns too. I think that's fine. The team with the 4th highest total on the slate somehow is the Colts at 26.5. I don't get it either. They are 7-point favorites against the Panthers at home and indoors. 50% of the bets at FanDuel Sportsbook are on the Panthers, but only 27% of the money. It's per OddsFire, which means there's some pretty big money on the Colts side here, and the spread has shifted a half point in their favor. The problem is the backfield is now a committee. Jordan Wilkins getting run over Marlon Mack. T.Y. Hilton is only one game off a long injury layoff. Frank Reich did say that his snap rate should go up this week, but they've been really weird with Hilton this entire year. So are you interested in any Colts here with a pretty big implied total?
Maybe still some. I didn't want to play Marlon Mack at $7,300 earlier in the year.
Would you rather? Because I'm having this dilemma. Would you rather get hit by a bus or use Marlon Mack at $7,300? It's hard choice for me.
Hey man, I didn't like Marlon Mack all year, and
no, I agree with you. You're right. This is a good take. It's fine. Own it.
So I don't really want any of the Colts.
I think Hilton is interesting. I don't think that he's good. I don't think he's a good play, but I think he's interesting at $7,300.
He had 9 targets last week?
Yeah, he had 9 targets on 50% of the snaps. He had some deep targets in that game. Like, I don't think he's good at that number. He actually hasn't had 100 yards this entire year. That's wild. But I always think he's interesting when he's at home. And he's an extra game removed. They think that he's healthy. I think the Colts technically still have a very slim shot at the playoffs. I could be. No, I don't think they do, actually. But, like, I don't know. I think Hilton's the only guy I can actually like get jazzed about. I guess maybe I should be. Oh gosh, no. I was gonna say I should be more interested in Jack Doyle, but he's $6,200, which is a really high salary. So like, I don't know, man. Like the implied total says I should go there, but I think the implied total is gross, and I think it's too high. And I don't know where I want to go here. I'm definitely not using the Colts backfield. Gross. It's just it's not fun. And I don't know. Maybe that's why I'm like talking myself into Hilton, because I think I should want to go here, but I really don't.
No, I think it's McCaffrey and DJ Moore in this game.
Yeah, I think that's fair. You could maybe run it back with Hilton in a mini stack, but I don't want either quarterback. Gosh, no. Yeah, I don't know. It's not great, man. It's definitely not great. Right behind the Colts in implied total is the Chargers. They are 7-point favorites against the Raiders. The pace in this game is going to be garbage, but there are some fun pieces on the Chargers team, and they're in a good matchup. So anybody grabbing your interest here on Los Angeles?
We're talking Sorry, I got distracted. That's my bad. You talking Chargers, Raiders?
Yeah.
I know it's great usage of podcast air, but I like this game a little bit. I mean, obviously Deandre Washington. I like Darren Waller, so if I'm going to run it back, I like Keenan Allen. What are you grimacing for?
Why do you like this game? I hate this game.
because DeAndre Washington's cheap. Darren
I mean,
Waller
I like a player in this game. I don't like this game holistically.
Well, I think that the prices are appropriate for a lot of these guys.
That's fair.
DeAndre Washington is cheap. Darren Waller is cheap enough at $6,500 for his 28% target share in 3 games without Hunter Renfrow. Keenan Allen is only $6,700, 25% of the targets since the coordinator change. Oakland kind of not a good pass defense, a little bit. Mike Williams is second in air yards per game now that Mike Evans is out. He's behind only Julio. He's $6,500. I don't know. I think you could do worse than this game. This is not a game that people will load up on. And if we like DeAndre Washington, at a certain point, you got to consider running it back.
Nah, not really. Because he's
Allen.
so cheap. I think that Keenan Allen is a pretty fair play. We were talking on Monday's recap podcast about how his market share numbers have stabilized again, and he's become like, a really good usage guy once again. You look back at his game logs, 10, 6, 6, 12, 11, 4, 10, 11. Like he's hit double-digit targets 5, 4, 3, 2, 4 times in the past 8, 7 games. My goodness. So I think that Keenan Allen is very good at 67. I don't have a lot of interest anywhere else. Like I think that I was mildly interested in Austin Eckler, given that he took some carries away from Melvin, but I think that's just because Melvin got benched for fumbling again. The question is, does the benching carry over into this game? Because Eckler is $6,800, and because he's so good, any shift in his usage is abundantly noteworthy. And I think that at least makes him kind of interesting. He has 50 or more receiving yards in 4 straight games. Like, I don't know. I think that he's at least kind of interesting. But I
thought you hated this game, and now you're like.
I hate the game environment.
Yeah,
and that matters a lot to me.
That's fair.
So like,
but
I don't think anybody's a priority outside of DeAndre Washington. I think that Keenan Allen's fine. He's good. I like that.
There are enough games that you can kind of write off that I think this game is definitely not one of the worst. It's down there, but it's. Again, I like Darren Waller apparently way more than you do. I know that the Chargers
Hunter Renfrow is back this week.
He's back?
Yeah, I don't know how. Well, it sounds like he's even back. I don't know if he's actually back. Let me check that out. You talk about Darren Waller.
Well, I mean, Darren Waller, he had a midseason lull in his usage. He has 28% of the targets in 3 games without Renfrow. He's the only pass catcher to get more than 15% of targets in that 3-game sample. So he's really the go-to guy. And if they're going to win, it's going to be through Darren Waller. They don't really do a whole lot else. So
I don't know. One lung Renfrow got in a limited practice on Wednesday. So he's probably going to be back.
I don't know. I'm going to have more of this game than you are. I know that much. So.
Yeah, you are. I would rather have Hunter Henry than Darren Waller. Henry is 61. Waller is 65. I think that if I'm ranking the Chargers pieces, Keenan Allen is easily 1. And then it's like, kind of Hunter Henry and Mike Williams in the same tier, Austin Eckler in the same tier. But DeAndre Washington is the only guy I want to use in this game. Like, definitely want to use. Maybe Keenan Allen. I don't know. I mean, it's a terrible game environment. The pace is so bad.
Keenan Allen is $6,700. He's barely above that, like, tier where you have a lot more question marks.
Yeah.
The Raiders are a terrible pass defense.
All right, so if you love this game so much, how much Phillip Rivers are you going to have? This is not as... I thought you'd be mad at me for bringing him up.
No, I mean, I've played more Phillip Rivers than I should. He's averaged 8.4 yards per attempt since that coordinator change. 9 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, though. If he tries to throw touchdowns instead of picks, he could have a huge game.
Was that a point shaving?
I think he wants to throw interceptions.
Yes.
He's had 307 or more yards in 3 of his past 4 games. If you give him like 2 touchdowns and 300 yards.
All right. I don't like using quarterbacks in games with pace this bad, but whatever. I'm not going to stack it. You can do it that, though. Whether you're playing DFS or betting on sports, you want to see how much money is on the under for this Raiders-Chargers game, OddsFire is a key tool for your research. Shop for the best lines in each market and see which side is getting the most bets and money. OddsFire is a premier odds comparison experience across major bookmakers in the regulated U.S. market. Never settle, always get the best odds. Check out the experience for free now on NumberFire or at oddsfire.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. We could have some rain in Miami for the shootout between the Dolphins and the Bengals, and I'm not joking when I say shootout. The rain appears light, so I wouldn't worry about the rain, but it does come with 14-mile-per-hour winds. That would be a downgrade for this game. Rain is also possible in Los Angeles for Brandon's favorite game between the Chargers and the Raiders. 14-mile-per-hour winds there. That'd be a downgrade for that game. There you go. Stack it now, bro. Let's move to the positions.
Everyone's cheap, and we know where the ball's going.
Whatever. Let's move to the position-by-position breakdown. If Phillip Rivers is not your first quarterback love, I'm quitting the podcast. Who you got?
Well, see you, Jim, because it's Russell Wilson.
It could have been Derek Carr, too, since you love that game so much, and he definitely throws more than 6 yards downfield.
He does. So
does he?
Yes.
Can you prove that?
On average. Yeah.
Can you prove that?
Yeah. I have Russell Wilson. Look, I mean, I don't feel great about any quarterback outside of Lamar Jackson, so I might as well shoot for some upside. And if this game goes right, Wilson has that. The floor should be high. And if you look at it from like a 17, 18 point perspective, he's going to get there, I think, pretty easily. It's just a matter of whether he maxes out there or goes for 35. He's the top play in my model in terms of like floor ceiling combination. So kind of feel obligated. Seattle's 6th in adjusted passing offense. Arizona's 30th against the pass. I would prefer Dak Prescott if he were 100%, but I'm probably not going to get that. So I think by having Dak not healthy, this is really throwing a wrench in everything. My second love, I mentioned possibly Ryan Tannehill or Matt Ryan, but I'm going to go with Kyler Murray in that same game at $7,700. He didn't score touchdowns last week. He had just one passing touchdown because Kenyon Drake had all of them, but he has 8, 4, 6, and 8 rush attempts the past 4 games. The overall passing efficiency hasn't been overly impressive, but in what should be catch-up mode, he should get some free rushing volume. For a quarterback who runs, I really do think that's valuable. Seattle's not the toughest pass defense necessarily on the full season, 14th there. And, Kyler Murray's, I guess, is as good as I'm going to get.
Yeah. I think that you mentioned Dak. Quarterback gets a lot better if Dak gets in a full practice Friday. So keep an eye on the injury report for the Cowboys. If he is full in practice on Friday, I will feel a lot better about him, and I'd rank it pretty high. But without that, my first love is Lamar Jackson, because if I don't like any of the quarterbacks in this slate, I might as well just pay for Lamar Jackson at $9,300. And I have the flexibility to get there with DeAndre Washington being available, so let's do it. The Browns' defense has been horrid without Myles Garrett and Morgan Burnett. The Ravens are on the road, and generally we prefer quarterbacks at home, but honestly, it could help keep things a little bit tighter. So that's good for Lamar. So even at $9,300, I am good with him. I don't know if I'll get there in cash games, but I prefer Michael Thomas over Lamar in cash games if I had to choose, which I'd probably do. My second love, hell is frozen over, Brandon. It's Ryan Tannehill. He is a slight home dog against a defense that just lost Sheldon Rankins and Marcus Davenport. Tannehill's efficiency should be good. His volume should be up in a game where they can't just kind of roll Derrick Henry out there. He has rushing upside too. I think that Henry is more interesting this week than he was last week because he did practice on Wednesday in a limited fashion, which is more than he did last week. So Henry's interesting too. We haven't talked about him. He would only be a tournament play and only a sprinkle low exposure tournament play. But I think that I should mention that I don't mind him. So Brian Tannehill is my number 2 quarterback here. Go ahead. Sorry.
Do Derrick Henry splits fall off in December? Is he only good in November, or is it after November starts?
Both. It's both.
So as soon as November hits, he's good.
So if they go to the playoffs, he will evaporate. He gets Thanos.
Okay.
But they're not in the playoffs yet. They got to make it to the playoffs. So it's still last week was a lapse in the time space-time continuum. It didn't exist. It's fine.
Okay.
All right. Who do you like at running back besides Derrick Henry, assuming that the calendar stays in December?
I have a few. I mean, you mentioned Tannehill. I'm going to go with 2 guys who drive me crazy, but it's Chris Carson, number 1 here at $8,200. his carry floor is probably going to be like 22 to 24 as a heavy home favorite against the up tempo Cardinals. They're a below average adjusted rush defense. They're 10th in rushing success rate out of backs on the full season, but I don't really care. Carson had 24 carries last week, 2 touchdowns, 133 yards against the worst rush defense. The matchup's still good. The pace is still good. So I'm going to go back to Chris Carson at $8,200. My second love, begrudgingly, is Alvin Kamara because he's only $7,200, not $8,200, not priced up where he's been really plaguing me. And this Tennessee Saints game should have points. I do have concerns, but even then, Kamara is cheap enough. Tennessee's 20th in target success rate allowed to running backs, 4th against the run overall, so it could funnel some extra targets to Kamara, and that would be really nice because he already has 10, 10, 9, 8, 6, and 5 targets since returning from injury. That's 22% of the targets since returning. And then my third love is just DeAndre Washington at $5,600. Josh Jacobs is out this week, and without him in Week 14, Washington played 64% of the snaps, had 14 carries and 7 targets. He's also second in target share in 3 games without Hunter Renfrow. So Hunter, rest up, buddy, get good. So
make sure you have a second lung that's functional.
Yeah, I figured he was out for the year.
I don't know why that's a wild thing to request of someone, but you should consider that, man.
Yeah, so I think Washington is a more than fine third running back in a cash game play.
I think he's like the first running back in a cash game, personally.
Well, I mean, like price, like.
Yeah. He's the first guy I lock in personally, though. Yeah. And he'll be on a lot of most of my tournament rosters as well. Yeah. My first love is Christian McCaffrey. He's a lot easier to afford with DeAndre Washington being there, and I'm just going to keep on using him because clearly this team is chasing records. He played every snap last week, almost every snap against Atlanta. He has averaged 37.3 adjusted opportunities per game over the past 3 weeks. That is 6 more than any other running back on this slate. And you can get to him thanks to the value elsewhere. So I like Christian McCaffrey quite a bit, even with Will Grier being there. My second love is Joe Mixon. His salary is up to $7,800, but it's for good reason because like we talked about before, he's got an increased volume and increased efficiency. He is averaging 27.3 adjusted opportunities per game since their bye week. His yards per carry has gone up more than a yard since Cordy Glenn returned, and he's facing the league's 25th ranked rush defense. Joe Mixon will be popular, but I do not care. I am okay swallowing chalk at running back. That is a key phrase. And I'm okay with it for Mixon. My third love is Devontae Freeman. I like him less than DeAndre Washington, but he's only $600 more. He quietly had his second highest snap rate of the season last week. He is averaging 15.3 carries and 4.0 targets per game since their bye week. And they're 7-point home favorite against the league's 30th ranked rush defense. He checks every box. And I think that if you want to try to get to Lamar and Michael Thomas in a cash game, you could go to Devontae Freeman, and I would not talk you out of that. I think that's totally okay to do so. I think that he and DeAndre Washington are they change my process for this week at running back, where I am more okay paying down than usual.
So with Freeman and Washington, you still don't think you're going to prioritize Lamar?
I mean, I would prioritize Thomas first. If I can also get to Lamar, cool. I'd take it.
I think that's probably doable.
Yeah, I think it is too. I know it is. I have it up on the right side of the screen because I was tinkering around while you were talking. Because again, I always listen intently to everything you're saying.
Yeah, I've never lost track of what's going on in this podcast.
Let's move to wide receiver. Who do you have there?
I have my boy Keenan Allen at
the best game on the slate.
Yeah, I mean,
guaranteed to go over.
Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, easy to love. But if you're spending up at quarterback, spending up on running back instead of paying down, I think Keenan Allen's fine at $6,700. He's got 25% of the targets since a coordinator change back in Week 9. Faces the Raiders, 24th in slot yards per snap allowed on the season. Just not good. They're 31st against the pass in terms of number fires adjusted metrics. Double-digit targets in 3 of the past 5 games, at least 6 in all of them. The ceiling, not immense, but really, once you get into like $6,500, we get in that range where it's usually receivers with paths to production, but maybe floors that aren't quite that good. And I think the floors here are fine. There's also a 2-for-1 because I like Mike Williams at $6,500 for tournaments because his ADOT's like 20 yards since the coordinator change. He's second in the league in air yards per game now on the full season without Mike Evans. So I'll take some stabs there. It's such a good matchup. I know the game environment's not great, but the matchup's great. My second love, Tyler Boyd, kind of another 2-for-1 here because we get Devontae Parker in this mini stack potentially. Boyd is only $6,300 last week with no Auden Tate, but with John Ross in a tough matchup, Boyd still had 24% of the targets. He gets the NFL's worst adjusted pass defense, and I think he will benefit indirectly with John Ross back on, to stretch the field. So I think that there's actually a good bit of value in the mid-range this week at receiver, but Boyd is one who stands out to me. And then I'm going to go with DJ Chark with the caveat that he might not play, but it seems like he's trending toward playing pretty clearly. Traveled with the Jaguars last week, but didn't actually play. Cleared, early on Monday this week. So, everything's trending toward DJ Chark playing. He is only $6,300. He's in a dome against Atlanta. Chark has a 23% target share on the full season. It's just 20% from Gardner Minshew, but still, if Chark's back for this game, if he's rushing back, it's probably because he's healthy. I think he's really close to some milestones, like just shy of 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, maybe. Okay. But if he's out, then I think we have ZD Westbrook at $5,700, but also Chris Conley at $5,800. So this kind of situation is one I'm going to be watching closely.
Yeah, Chark, if he gets in full practice Friday, is very interesting. I always talk about going with speed on turf, like with DJ Moore. DJ Chark, stupid fast. Chris Conley, stupid fast. So depending on the injury situation there, both those guys would be interesting. My first love is Michael Gallup, which is only if Dak gets into full practice by Friday. If we look at this team since the bye week, Gallup leads the team in both targets and air yards. He is $6,500 in a game they absolutely need to win. Great matchup against the Eagles. Totally good with that. My second love is DK Metcalf because he is $6,300, which helps safeguard us against Brian Schottenheimer. In the 3 games that this team played before Josh Gordon came over, Metcalf had 23% of the overall targets. He had 28% of the red zone targets. Also 23% of the deep targets. I think that Lockett is preferable if I'm stacking this game, but if it's a standalone play, I'd prefer to go with DK Metcalf. My third love is Christian Kirk. Since returning from his injury, he has 26% of the overall targets for the Cardinals. He has less than 50 yards in 3 of the past 5 games, but in the other 2 games, he had 85 yards and 138 yards with 3 touchdowns. I'm going to keep on going back here. The Cardinals have to throw to keep pace. He is $5,900. He is super talented, hefty workload. Keep an eye on the practice injury reports because then he did miss practice on Wednesday, but I do like him. All my receivers were cheaper guys, but I do want to mention I love Michael Thomas. I like Amari Cooper and Tyler Lockett a lot in game stacks. A.J. Brown's good. And one guy we have not mentioned is Cortland Sutton. He is at home against a terrible Detroit defense. He is $7,100. 24% of Drew Lock's targets since Lock starting, and 33% of the deep targets. So Cortland Sutton at 71, a guy we have not mentioned, but I want to actively make sure I get some of him this weekend against Detroit. Let's move down to tight end, Brandon. Who do you have there?
I have Darren Waller, apparently now with the caveat that Hunter Renfrow might play. If Renfrow plays, I'd just go to Hunter Henry instead. But Waller, 28% of the targets without Renfrow in the lineup since Renfrow became more involved. He's the only pass catcher with more than 15% of the targets. I think that he's just very much in play. Of course, I like Zach Ertz more for just $400, but someone else is going to talk about him. My second love is Mike Gazecki, just $5,300. I mean, we mentioned that game being interesting. He's got a 17% target share in relevant games without, factoring out when Devontae Parker left early 2 weeks ago and without Preston Williams. So that's pretty nice in the Bengals. Just 26th in target success rate, a lot of tight ends. So pretty nice roll. The price is right at $5,300 for like a low end cash game play if you want to spend up everywhere else.
Yeah, we were talking about mini stacks before with Joe Mixon and Devontae Parker. Joe Mixon and Mike Gazecki works too. I think that Gazecki's a good option among the cheap tight ends. Yeah, for sure. I'm on board with that. My first love, as alluded to, is Zach Ertz because I do want to use the Eagles here, but outside of Miles Sanders, Zach Ertz is the only really reliable guy. We've seen Alshon Jeffrey this year be either out or limited in 7 games. And in those 7 games, Ertz has 28% of the team's targets. That is 11.8 targets per game. He is getting Like, he's not getting Michael Thomas usage, but he's getting really good usage. And he's $6,900, basically a wide receiver. I think he's very worth it. He's not going to get he's not going to get yards after the catch because I think he already had his one missed tackle for the year. I believe he spent that a couple weeks ago. So you're not going to get that. But like, he's $6,900. I'm good with it. My second love is Jacob Hollister because recently FanDuel's been jacking up salaries for tight ends facing the Cardinals. David Njoku was like 55, and he wasn't even active. Vance McDonald was 55, and I'm not sure he's past the line of scrimmage in like a decade. But Jacob Hollister's 57. If we look at him since his snap rate went up, he has 19.9% of the team's targets. He gets some deep looks. Luke Wilson did get in a full practice Wednesday. He should be back, but he actually played two of the games where Hollister's snap rate was high, and he still ran ahead of him. Now, I think Wilson got hurt in both those games, so that may explain why. So maybe we lose some snaps here for Hollister, but I think that he's still worth it. So maybe you don't want to go at Hollister in a cash game because of that. I think that it's worth noting that. But for tournaments, I still like him quite a bit. Let's finish up with defense, Brandon. Who do you have there?
This is a scary one, but I have Washington.
Yeah. Daniel Jones loves him some sacks.
$3,800 for Washington. Daniel Jones is back. He is not very good. He is a significant downgrade from Eli Manning. He would rank, if you put his sack rate in terms of a team defense, that would be the 5th highest in the NFL in the full season. We know he can turn it over. Negative 0.12 passing net expected points per drop back. Just not good. And Washington's actually been decent of late. Over the past 4 games, they're 8th in passing net expected points per drop back allowed. They faced a mixed bag: Jeff Driscoll, Kyle Allen, Aaron Rodgers, Carson Wentz. It's not like Daniel Jones is better than some of those guys.
So Allen has more net expected points per dropback than Daniel Jones does.
Yeah. So and Washington's actually 2nd in sack rate in this span. Most of them coming against Driscoll and Allen, if I'm not mistaken. But again, Daniel Jones can take a sack. Washington's at home. I think
it's not that he can take a sack, it's that he loves taking sacks. Like, that's like long walks on the beach, love going out to dinner, love taking sacks, love handing the ball to the opposing team's safety. It's his favorite things. Yes. His Tinder profile is wild.
Yeah, I think there's a floor and ceiling here for Washington.
I agree. I think they're fine. At the same salary, I like the Bengals. I like the Dolphins offense too. I can like both. The Bengals defense, though, has been kind of like Washington, where they've been a lot better recently. Ever since that Lamar Jackson embarrassment game, they've allowed 17, 16, 6, 21, and 28 points defensively. They had a pick 6 last week. That doesn't really count. But they're $3,800 against Ryan Fitzpatrick. And this is one of the few games that is not a Ryan Fitzpatrick revenge game, which means we should expect less out of Fitz because of that. He'll turn the ball over. I also don't mind the Jets at $3,600 versus Devlin Hodges now that Jamal Adams is back. Speaking of handing the ball to the safety and letting him run it back, I think the Jets are in play at 36 because I don't expect Pittsburgh to move the ball because they haven't. So the floor is good, I think. And I think there's a path to a ceiling with Jamal Adams because he can do stupid stuff all by himself. So a good number of interesting defenses below $4,000 for this week. Brandon, I think this week is weird because it forces me to do a lot of things I don't do very often. That is pay down at running back in cash games, pay down a lot of running back in tournaments too, and prioritize an expensive quarterback and an expensive wide receiver. So it's a very uncomfortable slate, but I think that's necessary with the way things are shaking out right now.
I think that's probably the right way to play it. And I mean, that's the go-to build. Mm-hmm. But if you really want to get weird, you can pay down at quarterback with potentially, I know, but outside of Lamar, we don't feel great. So, I mean, you have that
career, baby. Lock it in.
Gardner Minshew, his 1.8 yard average target depth. I mean,
I'm talking about him on the FanDuel Hurry Up today. I will say that.
I honestly, yeah, I know I'm joking, but he actually rates out pretty well. So again, if you don't have to take the same lineup construction that we will probably take.
Yeah.
And I think that you can differentiate in so many ways this week that you're free to do almost anything you want.
I agree. But I think it's a good week to not be locked into your normal roster construction because, again, I'm not going to be doing the same way that I usually do. So be flexible this week because it's a different slate than we usually get, and we should be willing to react to the way this slate specifically breaks. That is all that we have for today. Once again, though, back on Monday to wrap it all up and break down all that went down and get you set for week 17. Make sure you are subscribed to the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Wherever you get your podcasts, you can get that right as it is posted. You can find that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen, you can find us. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm at Gadula13, GDULA13.
And I am at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, as always, for running the video side of things here today and keeping us live on YouTube. Thank you, Cal, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Hopefully week 16 goes well for you. Hopefully the weird roster construction breaks in your favor and we can chat in a joyous fashion on Monday. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by Number Fire.